Hey everyone, welcome back to another session of SellerSpeak, and today is all about scaling to sell. And selling your business should be your ultimate Amazon FBA goal. And even if it's not, well, you need to understand how you can scale your Amazon FBA business. And we will be talking about just that. I know it's been a while since we put out a SellerSpeak session, but we are really waiting for, or we were looking for a really interesting speaker for you. And we found that today. So let's move on with the session. So hey everyone, welcome back to today's session. We are going to be talking about scaling to exiting, and today's topic is really interesting because we are going to indulge in the world of selling your Amazon FBA business. We have an amazing speaker with us today. Hi Ben, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm really good, thanks. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, no problem. This is a very interesting topic. I think we've had other speakers on the similar topic on the channel as well, but they have not spoken about how to scale and sell your business. And I think the points that we're going to cover today are very up to date. And this is a topic that everyone needs to know before they start selling or even scaling to sell their Amazon business. So of course, planning in advance is really important. And that's why we have you here. So if for people who don't know, Ben started an Amazon FBA business in his wardrobe and scaled it to 7 figures before selling it. So kudos to you, Ben. Legends like you are the reason why we started SellerSpeak. And I think it's going to be really interesting for all the audience, or for our audience out there, to listen to you and learn from one of the best in the industry. So let's start with one of your speaker introductions, which would entail your Amazon journey. So tell us all about your Amazon journey. Did you have fun doing it? And one biggest takeaway from your journey as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had a lot of fun doing it, although very stressful at times. I got into e-commerce back in 2016. I started a fitness brand as a hobby, just for something to do. It turned out that I was pretty good at it, so I quit my job and I scaled it up. And by late 2019, we were doing about $6 million in sales. And I sold it to Thrasio, who most of your listeners will have heard of. And it was actually their first British acquisition at that time. And my biggest takeaway, that was a really brief summary, by the way, I hope that's okay. But my biggest takeaway from owning and operating an e-commerce business, and I'm still building businesses now, is that you have to build a brand. You can't just sell stuff online anymore. Those days are over. And besides that, I don't find that particularly satisfying, because I'm interested in building brands around topics that I'm personally passionate about. Like, for example, the fitness brand was the first one. And so if you don't build a brand, you don't have such a defensible, scalable, or sellable business, because it doesn't have its own true identity. You can't build a following of raving fans who are going to buy from you again and again. So in summary, the biggest takeaway is building a real brand.
A real brand, that is very important, because I completely agree with you. Now, Amazon has become so crowded. I think branding is one of the major aspects that literally puts you on top of your competition, or bifurcates you from your competition. So thank you so much for telling us your story. I think it was super exciting. So what kind of products were you selling? Like, I understand it was fitness, but did you have a lot of competition on Amazon? And if you did, what did you do to stay away from the competition or beat the competition in terms of branding?
Yeah, absolutely. There was competition. So we sold fitness products for, I guess, 3 subcategories of fitness fans: general fitness fans who like going to the gym, but also sports like CrossFit, strength training athletes who were lifting seriously heavy weights, and boxers. And the reason for that was really that I was interested in all those 3 things. I had partaken in those things, not all at the same time, clearly, but I was interested in those 3 topics. And so that comes back to what I said before about it. It's got to be something that you are personally passionate about. In order to sidestep the competition, I focused on quality and brand identity. Particularly on the Amazon side of things, we sold on our own website as well. But on the Amazon side of things, I saw a lot of Me Too generic junk, which was just off the shelf. Whereas I actually did a couple of things. One is we developed our own products. So we had patents, for example, on certain designs. The second was where we couldn't develop our own unique product, we would work with manufacturers to take their off-the-shelf components and essentially rearrange them into something better, and often work with them to actually improve the quality of those components, whether that was by changing the shape of something or improving the materials that we used. So quality meant that over time, and you have to be patient and let it take time, but over time, you are going to beat the competition. And then it came to brand identity as well. I saw a lot of just generic slap a label on it kind of stuff on Amazon, whereas we built out a unique brand identity. And one of the things that we did to sidestep the competition was to be very authentic. So I actually made myself, this was quite controversial, but it worked. I made myself the face of the brand, which in the fitness industry is a strange thing to do because fitness industry is very elitist. You got to be the strongest, the biggest, the fastest, the slimmest, the fittest. Whereas I'm just like an average guy. So making myself the face of the brand was a bit of an odd thing to do, but it worked because my customers wanted to buy from a real person or a brand that reflected a real person. So I basically said, look, I'm a normal guy, but I like fitness and I want high quality equipment. So come buy from us. And that worked.
Clearly. And I think that was a really smart move on your end. I have seen a lot of people like, it's easy for people to relate to someone who looks like them and is not completely like, buff or someone on the packaging because you don't associate with them, especially people who are just starting their fitness journey. I have started indulging in fitness just recently. And when buying like a lot of fitness gear, I tend to buy from like people who look like me and are not completely, the ideal fit type. So
Absolutely.
It just helps me associate with the product better. So that was really smart on your end. So buying, or selling fitness products on Amazon and now to e-com brokers, that must have been quite an interesting shift. Do you want to speak about it and talk about what e-com brokers are as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I sold Beast Gear, I sold it through a broker. And the experience with that broker was, in part, pretty poor. The deal eventually got done, but that was all thanks to my accountant. So the director of the accountancy firm who looked after Beast Gear's accounts, Alison Walker, she saved the day and tidied up the mess of the broker that I was using. And at the end of the process, after the deal had gone through, we kind of said to each other, well, the obvious entrepreneurial thing to do here is to fix this problem, right? That's what businesses and brands exist to do. They solve problems. So we created a better experience for e-commerce business owners to sell their business. So we created e-com brokers. So our job essentially is to work with e-commerce business owners to plan and execute their exit strategy such that they get the maximum value for their business and a deal structure that works for them on a timeline that works for them and according to their goals and values. We're very seller focused and relationship focused. The happy side effect is that buyers end up being happier too, because although they have to pay more for a business, they know that that is a fantastic business that is ready for them to take into their system because it's been through our process. So we basically filter out and only bring to them the best.
That makes a lot of sense. And when you said a fantastic business, so how does one make business fantastic? So I think this is the time where we speak about how you can make your brand sellable and valuable. Of course, you mentioned that branding is a very important aspect of it, but let's focus on some of the steps that go into making your brands more sellable and valuable.
Absolutely. To make your brand more sellable and valuable, there are kind of probably I think I've got 7 key topics that I think people should focus on. One is timing. Your business needs to be growing, but not maxed out, because a buyer wants to see a growth trend, but they also want to have some extra growth left for them to enjoy, right? So timing, growing, but not maxed out. Your business needs to be stable. And by stable, I mean that it's selling in a favorable niche. You're not doing any black hat strategies, and your business is transferable. And transferability takes me nicely into documentation, but let me just mention what I mean by transferability for a second. When an organization buys an e-commerce business, usually they're essentially picking up the brand and dropping it into their own existing setup. And if your brand is not very transferable, it's more difficult for them to do it, which makes it less of an attractive proposition, so it's less sellable and less valuable. And there's a really good way to ask yourself if your business is transferable. Ask yourself, if you fall over and break both your legs today and end up in hospital for several weeks, will your business run itself without you for a little while? If the answer is yes, it's quite transferable. If the answer is no, it's not very transferable, and that's okay, but you got some work to do to make it more transferable, which takes us to documentation. Documentation, the next topic. You want to be documenting everything in your business, all your systems and processes and procedures, so that when you hand over your brand or sell your brand, it can easily be absorbed into the existing setup of the other business. So it's more transferable that way. But you also want to have great documentation of all your financials, your financial documentation, your accountancy reports, your tax documents, your company formation documents, essentially anything legal. Intellectual property is another one. And speaking of intellectual property, that takes us to another topic that makes it sellable and valuable, which is defensibility. So nobody wants to buy a business which can just be outcompeted immediately. They want to buy something defensible, right? So it needs to have a legitimate brand identity. And that brings us to brand, of course. And that brand identity needs to be protected by intellectual property in form of trademarks and patents. And they want to be not just in the countries in which you're selling, but also the countries in which you're manufacturing. A business that buys your brand or business wants to make sure that they're decreasing their exposure to risk. And a great way to do that is the next topic, which is diversification. So your business wants to be diversified across 4 main aspects. Channels. So Amazon's amazing, but you don't want to just be on Amazon. Right. Ideally, you'd want to be on Amazon and your own website and maybe some other platforms too, like Walmart, for instance, or Etsy or something. Markets, so international markets. If you're not in more than one international market, that's absolutely fine. But your business wants to be set up such that it would be really simple for a new owner to move you into another market. So that's kind of one of the carrots on a stick that can make somebody want to buy your brand. That's where the growth is, right? So you don't have to be in other markets, but you have to be set up such that you could be. Right. SKUs. You don't want to have more, you don't want to be relying on just 1 or 2 products. What happens if you get suspended for some reason? Somebody accuses you of IP fraud on those products, or your factory stops producing it for some reason. So you need to have enough products. I think a sweet spot is between about 4 and 40. Not so many that it gets overly complex, but not so few that you're in trouble if 1 or 2 go down. And then this relates not quite so much to Amazon, but traffic. You want to have a diverse range of traffic sources coming to your website. You can't just be relying on one Facebook ad. What happens if Facebook changes their ad rules, right? So you need to have a diverse range of traffic sources. It could be Pinterest, YouTube, Google Ads, whatever it is. Next topic is suppliers, because a buyer is going to buy your relationship with your suppliers. So you need to have great suppliers with whom you have a strong relationship, but who you know are legitimate in terms of all of their audits, certificates, quality standards, environmental and social standards. Last thing you want to do is be using a supplier and then you're in due diligence with a buyer and the buyer discovers that everything about that supplier was not legitimate. So you really need to do your work on that. And finally, your business needs to be really efficient. So your business needs to be automated where you can make it automated. So have you automated things like PPC, inventory management, email flows, chatbots, and maybe you have a team helping you with day-to-day tasks on social media, email marketing, Amazon account management. So that was a bit of a ramble. I'm sorry, Ria, but it's important that people understand the things that they can do to make it sellable and valuable. So timing, stability, documentation, defensibility, diversification, suppliers, and efficiency.
Those were really interesting points, some of which even I didn't know you need to get in place before selling your Amazon business. So while listening to you, the main thing, and I think most of our viewers have as well, if you are planning to sell your business at any given point, what kind of profit margins are we looking for? Which one is the ideal profit margin that you should be making, or what kind of profits you should be making before you sell your business, or even start thinking about selling your business to via e-com brokers? Yeah.
Really, 20% or above. Some buyers will look as low as 10 if there's something special about the brand. For instance, some intellectual property, or if there's a really good reason the margins weren't high, but there is a clear opportunity to improve them with the resources in the backing of the new owner. But generally speaking, we want it to be at least 20. But it's worth noting that your 20% profit margin, after you've taken your business through a process with a broker like us, and we've done the financial analysis to squeeze out extra value, the number that we actually base the value of the business off, which isn't quite profit, is something called seller's discretionary earnings, which is probably beyond the scope of this conversation today. But it's going to be higher usually than the profit margin that the seller's been working off.
Got it. Okay, so is it based on like an estimated profit that the seller could be making, or in terms of
It's
that?
essentially your net income plus add backs and adjustments. So if somebody's listening at home and they want to do a quick back of an envelope calculation, take your sales revenue, deduct your cost of goods sold, add back any costs which wouldn't apply to the new owner. So that might be personal discretionary related expenses like your salary, health insurance, travel, maybe your phone and internet's going through the business. But it's also going to be one-off things that have been paid for and don't need to be paid for again. You've just had a trademark done, a photo shoot, some videos were made, you paid for a translator, a legal consult. You can add that back. But then there's repeated costs that can be added back. Your new owner doesn't need to pay your monthly accountancy fee because they already have an accountant, or a mastermind fee. These things can be added back. But then there's more sophisticated adjustments, which is, where we can really go to town. For instance, when we value the business, we value it on the trailing 12 months performance. Well, what if 3 months ago you negotiated a lower price on a product with a supplier, and now you're making an extra 25 cents per unit? Well, the new owner is going to make an extra 25 cents per unit going forward. But it's not really fair to the business owner if it's only contributed extra profit for the last 3 months when we value the business, because that's not representing the true value to the new owner. So we adjust the numbers as if you'd always made that extra 25% per unit for the whole trailing 12 months. If you do that across quite a few products and then apply a multiple to it, say the business sells for 4 or 5x, that has a compounding effect, which can add high 6 or 7 figures to the value of the business. So taking this through a real process with a broker rather than just selling to somebody directly when they approach you really makes a big difference when you get this calculated professionally. So if you're listening to this and you're saying, well, my profit margin is, 16%. Well, the good news is after you've taken this through a process, your SDE margin, which is what really matters, is going to be higher than that.
Makes sense. All right. Thank you for walking us through the process. Why should someone sell their business? And like, what happens if you don't sell your business? Like, I have met so many entrepreneurs who are so like connected to the business. They are not even willing to sell it, making them like family business kind of a thing. So why should you sell your business, and what happens if you don't sell your business?
Yep. Perhaps you need money for a new project. I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs who have loved their business, but they've just had a new idea, and that new idea is more exciting to them. When they get up in the morning, they're more excited about their new project, but they need some capital for it. So a great way to release capital would be to sell the original business, right? Maybe it's just time to move on. A lot of entrepreneurs have just become kind of fed up with the business, or they're not that excited about it. And that's a red flag. If the business is doing really, really well, but you don't have the same enthusiasm as you used to, there's a good chance it won't be doing very well soon, because you just simply don't have the same get up and go to make it run, right? So it's a good time to sell at that point. Maybe it needs more resources to get to the next level, and you simply don't have those resources. Or maybe you want to retire, for instance. Now, just because you sell your business doesn't mean that you're letting go of your baby, because you will always be the person that founded it. I sold Beast Gear. I will always be the founder of Beast Gear, and I'll always have an affection for it. But I was able to have my cake and eat it because I negotiated a contract with a good earnout, because I could see we were going to still grow. And I negotiated a contract where I actually continued to develop products for the brand, and I took a profit share on those new products. So that's one of the things we do at Ecom Brokers. Perhaps somebody has ideas for new products, but they want to sell the brand to get some capital off the table. Well, they can keep developing new products even after they've sold the brand, for example. If you don't sell, you could grow it more and sell it later. You might never sell it, and that's absolutely fine, provided you're set up such that the business is going to go, for instance, to your family or whatever it might be. But what I would say to people is build a business such that it is sellable, so that one day when they wake up and they've changed their mind and they want to sell, it's in a good condition to be sold. A lot of people just wake up one day and they decide they want to sell, but there's a lot of work to do. But if they plan it ahead, then it's a lot easier. And on the other hand, if their business is looking great now and they decide not to sell, well, there is a risk that it could fizzle out and then they end up with nothing.
Makes sense. Thank you so much for answering that question. And now that you have convinced people to sell their businesses if they want to, so how is the process looking like to sell their business? Like, how can one sell their business online?
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways to do it wrong. And
Right.
It's too much to get into that today, but if you want to see something funny about how to do it wrong, we made a page on our website. You can view that. It's ecombrokers.co.uk/movie. We'll show you how not to sell your business. It's kind of fun. The right way to do it is to work with a broker who's got experiences on all sides of the equation. That means that they are e-commerce business owners who understand what it's like to be in your shoes, but they're also mergers and acquisitions experts, accountancy experts. They've already sold businesses themselves. They need to understand all sides of the equation. And then what to do is to work with them to value your business now, just to find out where you are. So you have like a map and a compass. Because if you don't know where you are, then you don't know where you might want to go. Because you might have your business valued, you find out what it's worth. Let's say it's worth $500,000. And you might say, great, but I don't want to sell for less than $1 million. And that's absolutely fine, because the right broker will then work with you on your terms to get you there. The wrong kind of broker will say, sell your business right now, we'll have the money in your bank account in 30 days. They're not interested in your goals and your values and your aspirations. It should be about relationships and the long term. So that's what you do. You work with a broker who has experience on all sides of the equation, find out what your business is worth, and then go from there. It could be you sell it now, could be you sell it in 6 months, could be you don't sell it at all. But if you find out what your business is worth, then you know where you are.
Right. And what's one of the craziest deal structures that you've seen happening via ecom broker? Like one of your favorites, maybe?
Yeah, I wouldn't say crazy, because there's nothing particularly outlandish happening. One of my favorites was a business that we closed recently. I literally was looking at this earlier. I can just pull it up. The business was doing about 2 million in profit. And here we go. So the business was doing 2 million in SDE, which is what we spoke about earlier. The sellers got 12.6 million in cash at closing, plus an extra guaranteed 700,000 after 12 months. Okay. So that was a guaranteed 6.65x multiple, which is really good. Now, I have to say, most multiples are not that high. This is a phenomenal business. Okay. This is why it was one of my favorites. Now, what was really great about this was this. If in the first year and the second year after closing, so for both years, if the seller's discretionary earnings exceeded that 2 million baseline, then the seller got an extra 50% of the increment each year. So for example, say in the first year, it then did 2.5 million. The sellers got then 50% of that extra 500,000. So they got 250 grand. And then in the second year, let's say it did 4 million, then they'd get another half of that 2 million increments, another million. So phenomenal deal structure. And of course, that didn't include inventory. Inventory is paid separately. And the reason that was so good is A, the sellers got a lot of money at closing, life-changing money. But because they could see where the brand was going, they could see there was still growth, they wanted to have some cake and eat it afterwards, right? So we negotiated a really attractive earnout for them. So that was one of my favorites.
That's super interesting. And have you seen any royalty deals going in as well? Like if I were to sell my business and if I'm really I feel like I have a product that is different from the products that are out there. And if I own the patents, which, will help me, do you think, or have you seen royalty deals going on in in these deal structures?
So more often than not, the patent or the design registration is owned by the business, and it is the business that is sold. But if the patent is owned by the individual, then it would be possible technically to do something like a licensing deal, but there's not a lot of appetite among the buyers to do that. It's not impossible, but there has to be a really compelling reason for them to do it. You have to have some kind of phenomenal patent on something potentially completely game-changing. So that's not something we see regularly, to be perfectly honest, in e-commerce. But there are ways that you can enjoy upside afterwards. For instance, coming on as a consultant, as I mentioned before, or retaining equity is a really good one. So say you can see there's still going to be great growth in the business, but you don't want an earnout per se. You might sell 80% of the business, keep 20, work with the new owners to help them grow it. Then when they sell the business, say 3 or 5 years down the line, the 20% that you retained is actually now worth even more than the 80% you sold in the first place, and at a higher multiple. So you get 2 paydays, which is a really great way to do it. It's rarer. It is rarer, but that is the type of deal structure that we can help with.
That sounds amazing. I think ecom brokers I have recently started like looking into the way you work, and I think this SellerSpeak has given me a lot of insight on how you guys work as well. And you guys are by far my favorite people that comes to like, brokerage and selling your business online. I think our sales team also, when they come across a lot of sellers who want to scale their business with SellerApp and then sell it in a few years, we do like, send them your way. So I know that ecom brokers are really genuine and great out there. Speaking about that, do not take my word of advice for people who are listening right now. How do you think, Ben, ecom brokers are different from other competitors of yours in the market? Because as I mentioned before, we've had 2 people or 2 companies who have had like, the same topic of SellerSpeak on our platform. What makes you different?
Yeah, so there's what I said before in the experience on all sides of the equation, but then there's the fact that we're relationship based. So we play the long game. What we don't do is we don't flip somebody's businesses. There's a lot of brokerages out there with the word flip in their name now. I think flipping a business is a terrible idea. If you've grown your business with your heart and soul over several years, why would you relegate that to being flipped? It doesn't want to be flipped. It needs to be carefully sold. So listing it on a website where people in the team in the background are often VAs and are not experts, and having them work on your deal is a poor idea. So we are considered experts on all sides, and so we take our time to reach the goals and aspirations of the sellers. The other thing that makes us a bit different is that we're not a marketplace. So these new marketplaces have emerged. Some of the listeners might have heard of them. If you go to the movie page I mentioned before, you'll see about what they are. They represent the best interests of the buyer. Our job is to represent business owners and get them the best possible deal and deal structure. And finally, I guess is what makes us very different is we don't get paid until sellers get paid. So we don't charge any upfront fees. And that gives sellers confidence that we are incentivized to do the best possible job for them.
It's very, very unique and rare to come across businesses that put like sellers ahead of them and put their needs ahead of them and then take their payout. So kudos to you and your team. I think you've built something really special here, and I can really feel it throughout the session. And before we end today's session, do you have any promo codes, tips and tricks, or anything else that you would like our viewers to know right now? Sure.
Well, first of all, if you do come to our website and fill in our value your business or sell your business form, and you mention SellerSpeak, there's 10% off of our fees.
Amazing.
If you head over to there is a free ebook to download on how to prepare your business for sale. Apart from that, we're, like I said, we're relationship based. I love to talk to people, so people can email me. I'll be happy to help. ben@ecombrokers.co.uk, no catch, just want to help, or get me on social. Those are the main things, really. And like I said before, for something a little bit different, a little bit fun, ecombrokers.co.uk/movie. On how not to sell your Amazon FBA business. We just made something a little bit in the description. You know what? Just check the description. There's a card up right now, so click on that and let's watch the movie. I think it's really fun to watch it. Thanks. Yeah. Also, if you need to reach out, Ben, again, check the description. The email ID and the promo code will be mentioned in our description. Thank you so much for being here with us, Ben. This has been an amazing session. And of course, until the next time I see you all, happy selling.